It's great to see a lot of friends and familiar faces in the audience. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about the power of images, and just prepare yourself, because at some points during the course of the next hour and a bit, I'm going to make you all work too. So just be prepared, all right? So just, sadly I don't speak Arabic, so when it comes time for questions, I'm going to need the translation headset at some point. But I also wanted to give you just a little bit of information about myself, and I hope I'm not repeating what Jad said. So I'm a professor in the United States. I've grown up and lived around the world, including in Europe, in Pakistan, Thailand, and elsewhere. But for most of my life, I've been interested in how media cover international affairs and how media cover conflict, particularly. And so a lot of the examples I'm going to give you today relate to images that are looking at conflict, at migration issues, refugee issues, and so forth. So just bear that in mind. Just to start, these are two of my books. One is called Shooting War on the left, and was about how photography has influenced Americans' idea of war. Another more recent book was about terrorism and how media and governments and the terrorists themselves have used photographs to help further their own agendas. Another book of mine was called Compassion Fatigue, and it was essentially how, as the subtitle says, how the media sell disease, famine, war, and death. But I should say that I'm not just a critique of media, I'm also am a journalist and come out of journalism, much as Dr. Jad has. So I have a great love and a tremendous appreciation for the role of media, but I also see some of its faults. So today's lecture is going to be on the power of images, and particularly I'm going to push you to think about how you see, all right? So we're going to start with just a little tiny exercise. I want you to think of a wheel, all right? Everybody thinking of a wheel? Yeah? Everybody thinking of a wheel? Yeah? All right. I may have to just ask the English, because I don't yet have translation. I may just have to ask, anybody speak English and can tell me what they're thinking of? All right. In the print. Microphones? So when I say think of a wheel, what are you thinking of?
The wheel that they use in the ships.
Okay, so she's thinking of the wheel that they use in the ships. And the woman next to you also had your hand up? The wheel of the bike. All right, so the wheels of a bike that goes round. All right. I'm guessing if I had time to go around, I'm going to have a lot of opportunities to go around, so I'm just going to take those two. I'm guessing if I had time to ask all of you, all would name me something pretty specific, something that actually exists in the real world. A famous quote from the Greek philosopher Aristotle: "Thought is impossible without an image." That may be a bit of an exaggeration, but I think, as you just found, it's very hard to think of a wheel without literally thinking of a wheel. You can think of the things that wheels do. They make you go fast. They're often made out of hard objects or hard materials. But most of us have a visual picture in our minds of what a wheel is. All right, let me give us another example to the same kind of exercise. I have a son. All right, I want you to all picture my son. Okay. Now, in order for you to picture my son, you have to make assumptions about how old am I, right? Is she 70? Is she 50? Is she 30? Because that might influence how old you think my son is. Is he somebody like this? Is he here? Is he there? Right? Okay, so I've given you a little bit of information. I've told you I have a son, which I do. All right. You've got your version of my son in your head, right? Okay. He's 22. All right, so those of you who are thinking he was this high, all of a sudden, he's probably this high, right? And all of a sudden you realize he's probably shaving, right? Right. So now you know I have a son, he's 22. His name is, now you can make assumptions about what his name might be, because here I am. I'm blonde. You know I'm American. You heard that I grew up around the world. You don't yet know who my husband is, right? So my husband could be any color, any religion, any nationality. So you can't quite know what color hair to put on that 22-year-old. But maybe if you had a name, maybe if you knew his name was a familiar Arabic name, or it was a South Asian name, or an African name, you might be able to make some more assumptions about what he looks like. But my son's name is actually Walton. It's an unusual name even for Americans. It's from a famous book by Henry David Thoreau. So he's named after a book. So it still doesn't tell you too much. So now I'm asking you to think about what he does. He's 22, which means he probably graduated from college, which he just did. And now he's out in the world. And if I were to tell you he's a soccer player, or if I were to tell you that he's an auto mechanic, or if I were to tell you that he's in law school, again, that might shift how you picture who he is, what he wears, maybe even a little bit of what he looks like. So what he is a UX designer. So that's in the computer world, and he is someone who designs user experience. U for user, X for experience. So he's the one, when you look at your smartphone, makes it easy, right? He tries to simplify your life in software design. Finally, as you can see from this, probably your own experience of people who you know has shaped what you think my son looks like. Here's his picture. All right. So this is what he looks like. I don't know how similar or different this was. Did you picture him wearing a t-shirt? Did you picture him with my color hair? Did you picture him? But this is, so now you've done a longer thought exercise of hearing what I've told you and picturing it, and then finally reconciling your own image with the reality. And we do this all the time. We do it in movies. Those of you who might have read Harry Potter, for example, and then seen it on the screen, seen it in movie theaters. Was the Harry Potter you visualized, was it the same as the Harry Potter in the movies? All right. Third example. So let's say I want to talk about a statistic. I want to talk about 11.5% of this class. We'll call you a class. It's kind of hard to get your head around 11.5%. You know, it's a little bit more than 10%. What does that really mean? Right? So 11.5%. Now I had to guess how many people were in the room, but let's argue that I was right in guessing how many people in the room. I was guessing it's a bit more than 50, about 50. So that's about 6 people. Could I talk 6 people into standing up? You don't do anything other than stand. Can I talk 6 people into standing up? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We have 4. Thank you, over there. And you will, great. Thank you for volunteering. Okay, so 6 people. Would you all just mind just making a quick turn so everybody can see you? Just, that's all you have to do. Just turn around. All right, okay, great, now you can face me again. So 6 people. So for the rest of us who aren't standing up, keep standing if you don't mind, just for another 30 seconds. That 11.5% becomes a whole lot more meaningful when you actually see real people standing up. All of a sudden, oh, that's what 11.5 is. It's 6 people. 6 people who, they're women and they're men, so forth. All right, so now, you don't have to tell me your real name, but can you just tell me your name? And you can make it up if you want. First name. Michael. Manu. Zella. Zella. Gotta get that? Zena. Okay, so. Mizin. Okay. I'm sure I butchered your name. I apologize. All right. Thank you very much. You can sit. I appreciate that. So, you've met 6 people. You know their names. All of a sudden, they're realer to you than they were. This number, 11.5. Why did I pick 11.5? Because 11.5 of Syria's population has been killed or injured since 2011. That's 470,000 killed, which of course is nearly 500,000 people, and nearly 2 million wounded. That's a statistic you're all very familiar with, but you can see how we can make that meaningful in this little room by doing such a simple exercise of allowing us to visualize what that means in this small community of people. All right. So another way that I often make this visual for people who aren't in this region and who don't live this story is that's about as many people as if you had killed or wounded everyone who lives in Dubai, or Sapporo, Japan, which hosted Olympics a while ago, Brussels, Belgium, where I grew up, Pretoria, South Africa, Brasilia, Brazil, not far from the Olympics going on right now, Baltimore in the United States, where Jad used to teach. So that's another way of explaining this number to people. So what's the lesson from all these little exercises? It's to make you, or make your classes aware that we process visual information much better than we process texts. We retain it better, we understand it better, and we actually process it differently. And actually, not only do we remember images better than words, but we actually physically see images before we read text. There was recently a study that came out from the American University, MIT, that said we can distinguish between 2 images in 13 microseconds. It's fast. It's so fast you're not even aware you're seeing it, but you can say, oh, that was a woman, that was a man, so forth. So as a result, news outlets, social media, have all recognized that it's important to have photographs with information. Now, I live in the United States, but I also have a home in France. And when the attack in Nice occurred, I was at my home in France, not very close to Nice, but in the country. And I got on my cell phone, and these are screen grabs from my cell phone of people looking for their loved ones. And of course, they put photos up. And sadly, these are people who died, who later were not found. But the point, aside from the poignancy of showing you tweets that somebody's put out looking for someone is that tweets on Twitter that have photos are shared or retweeted 35% more than a tweet that is only text, only has that 140 characters. If you tweet video, they're going to get shared 28% more. And just generally speaking, if you're in the news and you have a story that has a photograph, it's going to get shared a lot more. So we think, essentially, we the public, we readers, think that news that has photographs is more interesting, and more interesting perhaps to our friends, our colleagues. So what does this all mean? It means that images matter. They matter to us as in a medical way. They matter to us in terms of how we process. They matter to us in terms of how we take in and understand information. They also help people make a personal connection. They help people care. Just like you all standing up, the 6 of you standing up. But sadly, images aren't magical. They don't automatically prompt political change. And I think you know that. You know that you can put up photos that may expose corruption, they may expose violence, they may expose pollution. And sometimes it makes a difference. Usually it doesn't make as much of a difference as you hope it will. But it is true that images get our attention. And that's what I want to spend most of my time in the rest of this lecture talking to you about, is how do images get our attention and how we need to be very mindful of how images are getting our attention. You're all familiar with this photograph. And of course, it made the news around the world. And this was a headline from a news outlet in the United Kingdom, in London, and it says, "If these extraordinarily powerful images of a dead Syrian child washed up on a beach don't change Europe's attitude to refugees, what will?" So images may shape what we see. They may help people near to an event, far away from an event, think about what that event looks like, maybe what it feels like. It may help create those personal connections. It may help people care. But they also frame how we see things. So literally, I don't know if this is a word you're familiar with, but if I were a photographer coming here to do a story on the MD lab, I might take 50 photographs. I might take a photograph of me, the lecturer, right? I might take a photograph of you. I may take a photograph of these 2 women in the front. I may take a picture of 2 of the men in the back. And if I only was going to use one photograph, the news outlet might have a different understanding, or people who read that news outlet might have a different understanding of what this event is. Oh, it's about a white woman talking. Or, oh, it's about women attending. Or, oh, it's about men sleeping in the back. So no matter how you told the story, each photograph would have a slightly different, would give you a slightly different understanding of what was going on in this room. Is anybody a Star Wars fan? Yeah? Okay. Anybody seen this trailer? So this is a screen grab from the new trailer for Star Wars Rogue One. It's coming out at the end of this year. These are the bad guys, what's called stormtroopers. So already around the world, people who like Star Wars, who like science fiction, have this image in their head So much so that when a photograph came out in the United States of the protests in the United States over African Americans being killed by the police, when this photograph came of a demonstrator, a woman, standing up to the police in riot gear, people started saying, stormtroopers, meaning the police, are demonstrating their skills in disarming a dangerous lady in evening dress, hashtag Black Lives Matter. So they're framing the Black Lives Matter protest and movement in the United States not only against the police, but against the dark forces. You don't really have to be a Star Wars fan to understand that stormtroopers metaphor. All right, so I'm now going to pass out, or have some people pass out, a piece of paper. You only have to look at the front of it. Sometimes there's some writing on the back. But I want you to go in groups. I think I have enough for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people, 6 people in a group. So just pass out one per group. While they're passing it out, I want you to take a look at the person on the front, and I want you to make some assumptions about who that person is. All right? You probably will want an English speaker because there's a caption to your photograph. You did, guys. Thank you. I'm actually using it so I can calibrate that. But I don't want to go there. But thank you. So take 2 or 3 minutes. Look at the image. You may have to move seats and see if you can come to some kind of assessment of who do you think this person is, what's happened to this person. You don't need to read the back. Just look at the picture. If you don't have a picture, just move next to somebody who does. Take about a minute longer. All right. I won't get around to all the groups, but I'm going to ask you to describe what your group has been saying. All right. So, all right. Why don't you stop now, please? And can I have first volunteer? Was your group? I think we're going to hand the mic around this time. You'll go second? Okay. So. No? Sure. We have one here. Sure. Go ahead. So, tell me. Okay. So your photograph is who? What is the name? What is the caption on it? Asylum seeker. Okay. Who else in the room has a photograph that says asylum seeker on it? Okay, you all do? Anyone else? No? Okay, so two of you have. So what did you think about the man in your...
He's looking for better life, or he's coming from a war zone.
Okay.
Also running from danger or against the political regime in
Okay.
his country. Also trying to find a legal place to live in.
All right.
Live in peace, yes.
Now let me ask one follow-up question. Did you come to that because of the photograph, because of the title, Asylum Seeker, or because of both? Both. Okay, great. Thank you very much. We have another...
Yeah, so talking about this man, I believe that he looks happy. Okay.
And what is his caption?
This man is an expat.
He's an expatriate, okay.
And we need to write up an assessment. So I feel, okay.
Go ahead, please.
So I feel that he looks happy, wealthy, businessman, something, maybe. And he is looking at a person and smiling, maybe wife, maybe family member, anything like this.
This is not as it down.
Yeah, okay. Is that enough?
That's great. Thank you very much. All right, others. I think we need, in order for the translation, we need the mic. Thank you.
Okay, this man is a migrant. My friend thinks he's a former prisoner.
Okay, former prisoner.
Yes, and I think, and Joanna thinks as well, that this man has been through a lot in the past years, and
Okay.
now he's trying to be positive, ambitious, looking for a brighter future.
Okay.
All smiling.
So he's smiling, looking ahead to the future, but he's had a hard past.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we've had an expatriate, we have an asylum seeker, we've had my expat. Okay, other ones, we're going to need about two more. That one, yeah? Hang on, let's wait for the mic.
I think he's a soldier, military. I mean, his eyes,
Mhm.
smile, full of hope.
Okay, so, and he's a refugee. So he's a refugee, he was a soldier, he's now hopeful.
Yes.
All right, great, terrific, thank you very much. All right, we had one other, okay, perhaps there?
At the beginning, I thought he was a patient suffered cancer, but I think now he want immigration because he a criminal of war.
And which,
He make
He's the expatriate?
criminals. He make a criminals in at where or in where and want immigration now.
all right, great, thank you very much. About asylum seeker? He's, okay, so I want to repeat it so they can get it translated. So he's sad, he's miserable. Okay, he may search for a new land, a new country to restart a new life. Terrific. Well, unless you were looking over the shoulders of the groups around you, may not have realized that he's the same person with a different caption and a slightly different photo. And I should have asked all of you, and I forgot, when you made your assessment, how much of your assessment was relying on the caption, how much was relying on the photograph of this particular person. I'm not sure I had this image. Internally displaced person, migrant, immigrant, expatriate. So what I want to do is, in a second, show you a little video about this man. But I want to reinforce what, again, this little exercise taught you, that what you see matters. Are you seeing the words and the photo? Are you seeing what he looks like? Some of you mentioned his eyes, for example, his smile. So what you see matters. Some of you were aware of who might be behind the camera. Maybe it was his family, smiling at his family. And you might have been also thinking about your own experience. What is it like to be a refugee? What might an asylum seeker be interested in? All right, so hang on, let me go out to the video here. It's 3 minutes.
You're about to meet Michael. He lives fast as a self-made millionaire.
You didn't have to dress up. It's all right.
You're going to photograph Michael. He's actually saved somebody's life. Michael is an ex-inmate. He's a commercial fisherman. Michael claims to be psychic.
Nice to meet you.
Michael's a former alcoholic. Here's your camera. I would like you to flesh out the essence of who he is.
What would you like out of this? What would you like the photograph to say about you?
Do you find that being a psychic impacts much on your day-to-day life?
I can see this is emotional for you.
Like to get to know the person.
You've only got 10 minutes, right?
I think you're a guy that's put yourself out there. You're not hiding anything. My plan was to find out about whoever it was and to try and get that. And what I learned from him is he's incredibly brave.
It was really intense. Pull his shirt out. Sorry.
I wanted to see the nature of the person, which then present a challenge. How do you portray him as a fisherman?
That's perfect. He's a self-made millionaire and sort of a little bit intimidating. I wasn't going for a beautiful, nice, perfectly lit portrait.
I just want to try and bring out something of who you are. I think that you just treat people like they're everyday people, like everybody is. Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, I hope I've got that guy's bravery on film.
So it was a very intimidating environment.
Can't see your work.
I like the empty chair next to it too.
Because it's a really different person.
Almost looks like 6 different people. So not everything I told you today was true. I'm not a fisherman. I am not an alcoholic. The GFC hit me hard, but I've never been a millionaire. Never been in prison. I am a Bondi lifesaver, but the story we talked about never did happen. Not psychic. Can barely spell it.
Before I knew there were different characters each this, I thought, that's really strange. These don't look like portraits of the character I thought you were. You always got your own preconceptions and you've got your ideas.
It pushed me into a position and a space that I wouldn't normally be in.
You have to dig a lot deeper. It means you've got to be, I think, a lot more creative to work out how you're going to play things.
A photograph is shaped more by the person behind the camera than by what is in front of it. So that was true for those 6 photographers who were told different stories about that character. That he was a millionaire, that he had been in prison, that he had saved a life, that he was an alcoholic, and so on. And you saw their pictures came out very differently. They photographed the man differently. Well, we do the same thing as readers. We bring our own experiences to bear on what we think we're looking at. So, what's the story each of these two pictures tell? So, I just want two people. So, the baby on the left, can I get someone to tell me what you think the story is telling? Starvation. And some disease, all right. And the child on the right, a Bedouin everyday child. Somewhere in India, maybe it's an Indian. Homeless? Happy. Okay, yeah. Maybe swimming. He looks wet, right? So these are both photographs that have been used by the international agency Save the Children. Save the Children has done a lot of research on what photographs mean, because as you know, they both help children and families, and one of the ways they do that is by soliciting donations from people around the world. They have come to the determination that when a child looks distressed, when a child looks distressed, they're starving, maybe they're diseased, they're crying, but the audience's response is, I need to help. They've also found out that when the child looks happy, people interpret that as saying, oh, this child has already been helped. So when they run their campaigns, when they're asking you to donate, they show the child in distress. By the way, they know lots of other things, like how important it is to have the child look at you, how the age of the child matters. Child is a little too old, you think, child can make it by him or herself. They often want androgynous looking children, not too male particularly. Anyway, so sad child, put that with an aid donation. Happy child, say, save the children, make the world a better place, see how you've already helped, see what a good organization we are. Which they are actually, but so that's what they're doing to make you feel good about them. So there's a lot of limitations to how we see and how we process, and you're trying to get you to come to terms with some of that. But increasingly, media, particularly online, in your hands, is telling stories through images. Some of you, I'm guessing, maybe on Instagram, you're using Facebook or other platforms where you're collecting images, and you're seeing images on news outlets. All right, so I'm going to have you do another exercise. How do you photographically tell the story of refugees? So I'm going to ask you to pretend to be news editors. You are at a news outlet, and you're trying to figure out the story on Syrian refugees, which is the most important photograph to start the essay with. And you need to think of a couple of things. What does your audience need to know? Because you might make a different decision if your audience is here in Lebanon or if your audience is in New York or South Africa or Beijing. And then, of course, what kinds of stories can you tell visually? So what communicates well visually? What is hard to communicate in pictures? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a half a dozen photos from an actual photo essay, but I'm going to mix them up. And I want you to tell me which photograph you think this news outlet, which is The Guardian, it's a British news outlet, both in print as a newspaper and online as a news organization, which one they started with. All right, so I'm going to show you all the images one by one, and then I'll show you them all together. But I'm going to actually have you again work in teams. So among a group of you, you've got to decide which one you, as a team of editors, would publish. Okay, so here they are. This is the first image. The caption is below. The caption says, "A little girl runs through the rubble of devastated buildings in Aleppo." So this is clearly a photograph about the war itself. For people who aren't familiar, this is what war devastation looks like. A young soldier from the Free Syrian Army sits among the rubble in a street. Right, yes, sorry, just wasn't translating. Parents who fled the war so their children could survive. They became refugees waiting for their lives to begin again. This is Syrian refugees, but it's in Turkey. So here we have a family. Here we have another family. This is a family inside the wreck of a building in Aleppo, countryside. Their house was completely destroyed after heavy bombing, and they were forced to become refugees inside their own country. And we have refugee children. 2 Syrian children stand outside the tent they now call home. They are 2 of the millions who were forced to leave everything behind and live the precarious reality of a refugee camp. Women and children line up and wait to receive their food basket in a refugee camp. A woman holds a picture of her dead husband. Traveling in Syria, this is still part of the caption. Traveling in Syria, I met a group of refugees. Among these refugees, I met a woman named Zara. She showed me a photo of her husband who was killed in the city where they used to live. He was alone with no relatives, living inside a destroyed school with 8 other families. Another photo of a survivor, a woman who was burned with acid. She was attacked in her hometown in northern Syria. She fled her country and came to Brazil in search of freedom and peace. And the last photo, a boy searches for his family. His relatives all died during bombing in the province of Beirut. His name was Ibrahim. He was 8 years old. I have this picture hanging on the wall in my house in Brazil. Every time I look at it, it reminds me of my problems are tiny, and this is from a refugee camp in Jordan. All right, so before you go into teams, think a couple of things. Which photo do you think is the best one? And you may make that decision based on aesthetics. You may make it based on the content. Among the group of you, and I want groups of 3 or 4 or 5, not just 2 people. How enthusiastic are you? Are you wavering which ones that you like best? Are you saying, no, this is absolutely the right one? Are you thinking of your audience? How your audience might feel? And how much does your audience matter to you? So you may think the public needs to know this. And you understand your audience may have problems with it, but you think the public needs to know, and so that's why you're choosing this one. Or you might decide, I don't want to alienate my audience. It's important they stay with the entire photo essay. This is just the first picture. So I'm going to take my audience into consideration. And maybe I'm going to lead in more slowly. Or maybe I'm going to lead in more emotionally. All right. So this little thermostat says, I support it. The photograph you choose is a clear choice of all the editors, or hate it. What was my group thinking? All right. So here are all the images. There are 9 of them. So which photo should lead the photo essay? All right, go. You've got 3 minutes. Start turning around, talking to people. So the two of you, maybe you could join with the woman next to you. That'd be great. Yeah? Maybe you could join in front with the people in front. Can you share with her? Or photo essay. Yes, you are picking the first photo for the opening of this photo essay. All of these photos were used in this photo essay. So your choice is which one is first. Okay? Yeah, you're only picking one. You're only picking the first picture. They all were in there. Oh, sorry. Okay, 1 more minute. All right, if you haven't decided yet, now's the moment. Decide. You guys decided? Yes? Yes? You guys decided? No? Decided? Yes? Yes? Decided? Yes? You all decided? Don't tell me. Don't tell me yet. You decided? Yes? Yes? Decided? Yeah? Back there? Decided? Yeah? Yeah? All right. Don't tell me. Yeah? All right. Okay. So, what I'm going to do all right. So I'm going to go through the various images. I want you to have your group put your hand up if this was a photograph, which photograph you all decided on. And then, just because we have a number of other things I want to get to, I'm not going to go out to you. I just want to see whether you have some, who agrees with whom. Any group pick this picture. Oh. You had some conflict, it sounds like. Conflict? We had some people who just, you had some same conflict? Yeah? Okay, you were unanimous. Ooh, good. It's nice to see, you know. So, and I'm assuming you picked this one because sums up everything. Okay, great. Well, let's go on. Anybody pick this one? Okay, we have a lone person who's bravely saying, this is the one. All right? Puts a human face on it, is that? Okay, depends on the title. Good answer, good answer. All right. Anybody take this one, this family? All right, we have a person who picked this family. So clearly you guys weren't unanimous, it sounds like. All right, all right. I'm glad there's some outspoken people in the room, right? This is important. Stick your own mind, all right? Remember that. All right. This family, anybody pick this family? You guys didn't like the families. You're not family people. Okay, that's right. It's okay. This girl, all right? We have a couple outliers. I thought you guys were unanimous. Oh, you were unanimous. Oh, you guys weren't. Oh, okay, I got it. Okay. So we have a couple of people, lone outsider types, 3, maybe 4. Okay. This one? Nobody liked this one. It's harder. It's a vertical, so it's darker, harder. I get it. All right. All right. This one is a woman looking in the mirror. This is hard too. It's hard. The mirror she's looking at is really the powerful part of it. It's small. So I get why you didn't pick this one. Powerful story. You did. Oh, okay, great. Glad to have somebody representing this photo. This one, woman in the acid attack. Very powerful. I'm sure women in the audience, many of us can imagine, or at least we think we maybe can imagine what she had gone through. Even men? Good. Using acid as a weapon, yes, absolutely. Terrifying. The boy. I'm seeing lots of hands go up. Yeah, it's because you were listening to me when I was telling you about Save the Children, right? People looking at you, right? Yeah. So we're on generator? All right. So you want to know the answer? Sure? Yeah? So, our outspoken woman in pink. Nice job. So, but I think as your conversations should have made clear to you, there was no wrong answer. I'm proud of you for picking the same one that The Guardian did, but that's not necessarily more right than those of you who picked the scene setter of the devastated town of Aleppo, or those of you who picked refugee children, or those of you who picked the very emotional one, the last one of the boy staring at you, the one, in a sense, the photographer thought was clearly the most emotional.
You know, it's clear the person who took the photo did not live in Syria, because so many houses in Syria, regular, this is the way they sit and they live. So that's why I wouldn't take this one. You know? So many houses are like this, you don't have, so simple, so.
So many houses in Syria are like this. So a Syrian, just to repeat so people can hear, so a Syrian would not have picked this picture. Or a Lebanese. Interesting, very interesting. All right. One of my photographic heroes is a man named Damon Winter. He's a photographer for the New York Times, won many, many awards. And he makes the comment that you read here, we, meaning photographers, we are not walking photocopiers, we are storytellers. And that's what this past exercise was asking you to do. Tell a story. And where are you going to start your story? Everybody's story may have the same elements in, but where do you start and where you end? The journey you take in that story will be different. Different for different people who tell it, different for different audiences, as our colleague in the audience just made clear. All right. Another case study. So about a year ago, the 22nd of March, 2015, was bombing in the Brussels airport. And so I looked up to see how Middle Eastern newspapers covered the bombing. And I want you to take just a quick look about how the photos and headlines framed the news. Just to recap the story, there were 3 suicide bombings at the airport and the metro station. Another bomb was found. 32 civilians and the 3 attackers were killed. 300 more were injured. And ISIS, Daesh, claimed responsibility for the attacks. All right. So I'm going to show you just some front pages of the news outlets. And I want you to take a look. I'm not going to go out to you, but I want you to take a look at the kinds of photos they chose and the words they used to describe it. Just as in that series of photos that I handed out where the captions, refugee, migrant, asylum seeker, made a difference. Are you talking about the dead? Are you talking about that they were killed or that they were murdered? Are the attackers that being called attackers or terrorists or jihadists, or how are we describing it? So again, to repeat, you're thinking about, as you're looking at these, what are the questions? What's the most important news? Is it where it happened? Is it who made the attack? Is it about who died in the attack? How can you tell the story accurately and fairly? And then how do you get your audience to care about the news? Right. So here are the photographs. There's those enlarged. So 2 papers here in town choosing different photographs for their coverage. Also in Beirut, you have 2 different titles: an attack versus terror, jihadist terror. Two papers from Israel, both the same. One's the Israeli version, one's the Hebrew version, one's the English edition, choosing the same photograph. Dubai, 2 papers in Dubai, calling it terror, calling it blasts. Again, different photographs. In Abu Dhabi and in Saudi Arabia, one's quote, blind, violent, cowardly, referring to what the attackers did, and one calling it war. In Kuwait, terrorists, attacks. In Oman, terror, explosions. So as you look at that different way that these papers cover the same story, with essentially the same deadlines, with essentially the same access to information, you can see they made different choices. In many cases, probably dependent on their audiences, perhaps dependent on other ongoing stories in their environment. But as you come to stories, you're always going to want to consider who are the audiences of that news outlet, and is that shifting how the stories are being told? If you're looking online, you may have a choice beyond a still photograph. You may have a video that you can look at. You may have a slideshow. You may have a GIF. You may have other ways to see a visual representation. Is that changing things? And then, of course, what's the frame of the story? Is it going to be about statistics? This is how many people died. Is it about looking at the blood and gore? Is it looking about how we should be fearful of foreigners, of migrants, so on? All right, last case study. All right. How much time do I have left? I'm already over? I'm okay? Okay. So last case study. So the Paris bombings were in the fall of last year. And I want to do something similar like I just did about the refugees with you all. I want you to think about what the story was about. You, again, are going to be news editors, and you're going to be thinking about how do you want to tell the story? Are you going to emphasize the fear that this created in Paris, in Europe, around the world? Perhaps you want to talk about the first day coverage. Perhaps you want to talk about how the French responded. Did they respond well, quickly enough, with enough force, with too much force? Maybe you want to focus on survival. Who survived this? You want to give a more hopeful approach to this. Yes, it was a terrorist attack. Yes, ISIS claimed responsibility, but you want to tell people not to live in fear. So you're going to talk about survival. Maybe you want to talk about survival, but you're going to emphasize the injured, people who are getting help. Maybe you're going to not only focus on the people who were hurt, but the fact that they're literally being given help, so the medical response. Or maybe to you, the story is really about those who died. And this is the beginning of your commemoration of those who lost their lives. So, again, what's the frame of the news? So again, I'm going to show you a number of images. I'm going to give you what I very simplistically have suggested frame of that particular photograph. I'll show them all to you one by one, then I'll put them up on a screen, and you decide what you think your news outlet should be. Now, the one thing I've done different for this last case study from the first one is all the photographs that you're going to look at actually were used by some news outlet around the world. And what I'm going to show you is not how one news outlet covered it, but how about 20 news outlets covered the story. All right? So as you're looking at these, bear that in mind. But I do have one caveat, which is because of the timing of the attack, it was very late at night. Most of the news outlets in the Middle East and Asia had already, as they say, gone to bed. They were already in press. So the news coverage that you're going to see is from Europe and the Americas for the most part. And that's purely because of when the attack took place. Okay? So the fear. So here's soccer stadium and people running in the soccer stadium. People running outside in the streets outside the club that was attacked. The response by French security. Here we see the security guards running with helmets and shields. You probably could turn off some of the lights just for these, please. Can you hear me? No? We'll turn them back on, but it's easier to see. Is that better? Right, okay. So, fear, French security, survival, and medical response. The one on the right is a first responder. I guess you're left. Medical response, one being taken on a stretcher. Medical response. The dead. The dead. So we have one that has no people in it, but you can intuit that perhaps this person died. And the next one, I'll go very quickly past it. Of course, it has people visibly dead with blood. The dead, solitary, the body by itself, shrouded with a glowing light on it. The dead shrouded, and then medicine, the doctors, the first responders standing by. Okay, so again, should it be about fear, about the French security response, about survival, about the injured, about the medical response, about the dead? Or something else that you might come up with? All right, so here are the 12 images, and why don't we get the lights up again, please? All right, so you're going back into your little groups, and then we'll finish by going through the images of how this incident was covered around the world. Great. All right. All right, everybody pretty much decided? All right. So I'm gonna do what we did last time, just have you put your hands up for which ones you chose. And then I'm gonna go forward and have you see how news outlets around the world chose. All right, any groups pick this one, or individuals pick this one? No one picked the soccer. All right, or football, sorry, football. Anyone pick this one? All right, we've got one man picking a classic French street scene in front of a cafe. The cafe is actually named La République, right? So it all is very, yes, exactly. All right. French security, anybody pick this one? No? All right. This one? Quite a number of you picked this one. All right. Yeah, we really can see emotion in the woman, particularly as she's being walked to safety. Mm-hmm. This one, the man on the cell phone, I'm assuming he's calling his relatives, right? Probably. I'm safe, I'm safe. This one, the medical response. No one picked this one. No? No? Didn't like this one? All right. This one? No? Huh. All right. This one? All right. So speed, focus on the person, we can clearly see the ambulance behind, right? Absolutely. Yeah, so we're saying the urgency of this. No, I think it's a very good caption. The dead, anybody pick the two sneakers? Very evocative, doesn't have to, not a lot of blood, or no blood and no gore, but you know that something's... It looks a little staged? So a reason not to pick it, maybe. All right. So, evocative but too staged. Right. Were they both really not on the curb that way, or was one moved? Right. Okay. Anybody pick this one, the graphic one? All right. Number of you did. And the reason? How bloody the attack was. So you're getting to the reality of what actually happened. In other words, too strong for some audiences. So there's a balance between what happened and what does your audience. I think it's a really good observation about what audiences have lived with violence and conflict and what they might be more familiar with or more willing to see. I did a study, this is just a small takeaway, but I did a study a little while ago on how another event was covered, another terrorist attack was covered, and I was particularly interested in how newspapers from cities that had other attacks, so New York and Madrid and London, Beirut, and there were another number of others. And it was interesting that cities that had had previous large terror attacks actually did use more graphic images on the whole. I think perhaps partly for the reasons that you mentioned. The Dead, anybody do pick this one? All right. Very beautiful in its darkness without blood. And to me, it's almost a religious picture. I don't know why I say that. Good point. This one of the medical responders around the day. Anybody use this one? Okay. We've sort of run out of time. I'm not going to do this, but let me tell you what, if we had a little more time, I was going to suggest that you do, which was often what happens in newsrooms, let me go back here. Often what happens in newsrooms is not everybody is in unison, not everybody agrees, and there may be people who say, no, I want, just as you have here, I want the reality. Other people saying, I'm not sure our audience can handle it. And they do something that what some observers have called a pre-mortem. Some of you may know this term post-mortem. So for example, if someone dies and they're trying to find out what killed that person, they'll do a post-mortem, an autopsy, and they'll say, oh yes, that person died of cancer, or that was a heart attack. A pre-mortem is where you, beforehand, you say, what do we think might be the consequence? And so here it says, if I choose the top photograph, what are the consequences? And maybe the consequences could be that an audience would turn away. An audience wouldn't visit my news outlet, would go somewhere else. On the other hand, somebody else could argue, if I don't show them the full reality, the blood and the number of dead, they're not going to really understand what happened. They're going to toss it off and feel very unconcerned about it because the photos were beautiful, the photographs were simplifying the situation. So, talking through the risks of choosing photographs, of choosing different frames. If you choose one that only shows the fear, how do you help people overcome that fear? And sometimes the way of dealing with your choice, a difficult choice, may not mean, okay, you choose the opposite photographically. It may mean you think about what headline are you going to use? What caption are you going to use? Are you going to put a warning attached to it? Are you going to have someone with some authority in your community speak about the importance of seeing that image? Or say, if you want to really see what happened, you can click here and go to more and get more of the details or more of the real photographs. So it's a good exercise to think about, and I think many of you already did in your conversations. All right. So let me first start with how the major French news outlets, okay, so hometown, home country news outlets. Okay, these are both Parisian papers. So they essentially picked the same image, a little bit different than the ones I picked, not every single one. I had to pick just 12 to put up. But you can see it's medical responders taking out the injured. You've got an ambulance in the picture. And what's also interesting is neither of them are using the word terror. One's using the word war, and one's using the word massacre. So the war in the middle of Paris, massacre in Paris. Two more Parisian papers. This time it's war and terror in Paris. And again, in these two, you're actually seeing the dead. Not by themselves, you're seeing the dead being carried to by first or second responders. All right. So those are the main Paris papers. How the rest of the world cover it? Okay, we have, and what I've done is I've grouped these not globally, but I've grouped them by who chose what picture. All right. So we have a Canadian paper on the left and a Dutch Netherlands paper on the right. And again, they picked first responders, pictures of the dead. In the United States, newspaper from Miami in the South United States, and the newspaper comes out of New York, the Wall Street Journal. Again, taking pictures of the dead. Now, who began to take pictures that showed the survivors, the focus not on the dead, but those who lived? Sunday Times, this is actually from South Africa. And Carnage, and this I believe is one of the Canadian, I think this is Quebec, yes, Quebec. So from Canada. Oh, yes, okay, so we have the London Times on the right, and we have the Madrid paper on the left from Spain. And you can see that the photo, actually, that none of you picked, which is of the man being carried, was actually a very popular photograph. All of these, slightly taken from a different angle, these two, but they're all of the same scene. Did I just say El Tiempo was Spain? El Tiempo is Colombia. El País, or did I just confuse that again? Moses, help me out here. El País is?
It's Spain.
It's Spain, yes. Okay, so El Tiempo, the one I just told you, was Colombia in South America. El País is Spain. I don't know why I have problems with that. Haaretz, obviously, from Israel. Dallas Morning News, this is from Texas. And Chicago, both in the United States, both taking that one of the security forces, the ambulances, and both using the same title, Massacre. Times-Picayune is from New Orleans in the South United States, and then the New York Times. And you can see that there were newspapers that chose 3 photographs. The soccer football image, image of the dead, and image of the survivors, both of them privileged, made the most important the one of the ambulances. A Boston paper, a Washington paper, picked the one that I think probably more of you picked than anybody, which is of the survivor, the young girl. Chicago, Baltimore, all of the United States. And now you can see the words terror from going from assault, atrocity. Now we have 2 that are saying terror. Another, I guess this is Dutch, or is this Belgian? And an American paper, Seattle Times. Can you put the screen back on? We're almost done. No? Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not done. I mean, I'm just going to show the last 4 images. But I don't have to. I haven't done anything.
I think the projector needs...
A new bulb? Well, all you're missing is more using the photograph of the woman. But I think what was interesting is the last ones I was going to show you were the ones that were showing the bloody image. And what I thought was particularly interesting was many news outlets ran that one very large. So there might be an argument saying that such a graphic image should be run smaller so as not to be so aggressive. But many of the news outlets didn't do that. They actually ran it quite large. Yes, there they are. Okay, so this was the ones you just missed. So more of the girl. Los Angeles Times, the United States, Daily Telegraph from England. And then here you can see some of the ones that run very large. And the very last two or three I wanted to put up were some news outlets made a choice to not show any, but to show the response. This became the icon of the attacks. The peace sign turned, or the Eiffel Tower turned into the peace sign. And then there were several papers that actually, this was the image they chose. In other words, an all-black image, but using the dates to commemorate. Instead of, for example, the United States, we remember 9/11, and other countries remember other pivotal dates in their history. This paper was saying, this is a date that should live in infamy. So thanks very much for your attention. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask? Put mine.
For the choices of images, that you can actually see that some of the American newspapers chose to have a half a page instead of a full page for the actual article and adding other articles to it. And that plays a big role for the choice of the image. Hence, they're not going to choose a graphical image instead of going for a full page one. So because we're talking about the choices for the images, yeah, you've got, for example, that one, you've got 2 other articles with it. Hence, they're not going to choose a graphical image. On the other hand, if you go for the newspapers with the full article, not with...
Like that one?
Okay, for example, the one that has 3 images. Yeah, that one. So you can see that they've chosen images that they have the first response, and the ones that have the dead people, and the one that have the people running. So you can actually see whether it's a full page, then the images are going to be different, the headline is going to be different. If it's a half page, then the article is important, but not so important to have a full page.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting observation you're making about how much, we can call it real estate, how much space, particularly in print, these are all print publications that I'm showing you, they give to stories. I would For this particular story, I might make two observations, which is, even for Americans, which were 6 hours behind, it was coming in, the news story and the photographs and the total of dead, it's coming in pretty close to the deadline of the papers for the next day. In other words, the news editors had already selected what the front page was going to be when the event broke. So they immediately had to remake their front page. And so I think some newspapers pulled out stories that weren't important, that couldn't hold for another day. Others remade their whole page and moved important stories down, as we say, below the folds. And some of these, both of these papers are sold on the newsstands, folded in half, so you only see the top half of the paper. But it is interesting, and a number of media commentators have made very good studies on when the news appears, whether it's in print or whether it's online, what's next to it. Because of course, we as readers or we as news editors, we make connections between stories. We make judgments about how important a story is, but we also wonder about the relative value of stories. If, as you say, more than one story is prominent, is that saying that the story is not as important as it actually should be? So I think in a media literacy sense, it's important to know whether you're looking at media online or in your handheld or in print or on the radio, TV. It's important to know a little bit about the timing of the event and the priorities of the news outlet to know how they covered it. But once you've done that, once you know what other stories are important, I think the kind of judgments you were just making about what does that say about that news outlet's priorities, what does that say about that community's priorities, those are very important observations to make. Yes.
شكرا لك على المحاضرة وعلى المعلومات المهمة اللي حكيتيها حضرتك، بس أنا بدي أعطيك تعليق من حيث انتهى الموضوع، موضوع بارز. هلا مثلا احنا شفنا غالبية الصحف الأجنبية كان في تركيز على العمل الإنساني، العمل الطبي، الخدمات الإنسانية المقدمة، لكن الصحف العربية كلها غربية أوروبية. إذا أخذنا الصحف العربية كيف تناولت الموضوع، طبعا احنا كان في تركيز على الضحايا، على القتلى أكثر، ما بعرف شو طبعا. وفي نوع ثاني مثلا احنا عندنا سياسه الجليد شو تطلب شو تتحكم فيه، يعني مثلا هون بالصحف الاوروبيه والغربيه كان في تركيز لاحظنا على الجانب الانساني، لكن احنا مثلا في صحفنا العربيه مثلا غالبا ما يكون في تركيز على القتل اكثر، انه سبب الارهاب والقتلى والعناوين تاخذ اكثر الارهاب سيقتل سوف يعني كثير في رعب. فهيك احنا كان اختيارنا حسب المتعودين عليه، لكنه فما بعرف احنا كيف اضطرنا نغير السياسه ونعمل فيها، بس تعليق انا حبيت اخبرك يعني. شكرا لك.
Thank you. I think when you were talking about when academics, when media critics and professors are talking about media choices, they're talking about photo choices, they're talking about headlines, maybe they're even talking about what story to cover or what story not to cover. Paying attention to audiences, communities, what the community is familiar with, is absolutely critical. So I'm not surprised to hear what you say, which is that if you're making a choice for an Arabic paper, or making a choice for a Lebanese paper, for example, you will make a different choice than a community somewhere else. Absolutely agree, and I think that's entirely appropriate. I think what's also interesting to note, too, though, is how news outlets, even within the same country, can make different choices. Sometimes it has to do with the politics of the news outlet. One news outlet is very liberal, one's very conservative. One's owned by the government, one's owned by the opposition party. One has a very young audience, one has an older audience. So there are different reasons, even within a single culture or a single place, why different choices may be made. And that's something else to understand. One other comment, I've been mostly talking about photos and haven't paid much attention to print versus online. But one of the big shifts in the last decade or more as news outlets move online is that they are able to see and judge in real time what their audiences are looking at and how long they're staying on. And they are therefore using that information, that data, to either switch out photographs, change words in headlines, and those can make a real difference. There's actually, I don't know if any of you use the browser Chrome, Google's Chrome, but there's a addition you can add to the Chrome browser that will show you on news outlet pages the experiments that they're running in real time about the photographs they're choosing in the headlines. It'll highlight which news stories they're switching out headlines and which ones they're switching out photographs on. So if anybody's interested in that, I can show them that on